We all talk about what's really happening around us. I was speaking at the forum today and I was talking about how things have been changing, how what seemed like science fiction is today a reality, right? And most important driver there is AI. What we could not have ever imagined a few years ago is today becoming a reality. I was at Pacific Telecom and they were telling me that while they're setting up all these data centers and now data centers for AI, but the challenge today is the network. Earlier they used to only talk about power saving and space saving, but today network is not an afterthought. Network is most critical. And why does the network really need to be adaptive? Because if you see what's the demand on the network today, data is growing by the day, right? Every application of AI means more intensive data. Right? Let's talk about ChatGPT, for example. Gartner did an analysis wherein they said today only 1% of the internet is thanks to generative AI, but it will probably go to 11%. But that was even before they saw the advent of text to video. So this situation is going to get only worse. So the network today needs to be scalable, needs to be secure, needs to be sustainable, needs to be self-optimizing and self-configurable. And that really is what is called the adaptive network. And that is what we offer today to our customers. Let's take a use case, like you said. I mean, there's about every industry you take up, there is a use case. But let's talk about healthcare, right? Uh, there's a very interesting Harvard study which says in India today, there's just about 20 odd thousand radiologists. Right. If I do a thumb analysis, probably for every one person, say about 100,000, for every 100,000 people, maybe one radiologist. Now look at the load on the radiologist and the speed at which the radiologist can really deliver. And we've all faced it, right? When we go for our own reports, we have to really wait for the report to the end because the radiologist is not available. At the same time, this leads to multiple errors. Today, there are about 5.2 million diagnostic errors that happen in the country. Can AI solve all of this? The answer is an absolute yes. From a use case perspective, let's say what the AI will do, it can probably minimize these risks. It'll change the way these reports are shared, the speed at which, but what is the need on the network then? Now, the network needs to ensure that it's extremely fast, low latency, low loss, and extremely resilient and always on. Let me give you one more example in India's context, because in the global context, things are different. Why adaptive is even more important in India context. Because of the sheer fiber cuts. I was at one of our customers and they mentioned that on one day they had up to 40 fiber cuts. 40. And the system was still running thanks to adaptive network because it can always reroute, self-optimize and figure out what is the best path despite so many cuts. If I were to say that's easy, the answer is no. Because every time you build a network, in few years you realize that the demands have gone up. And in today's day and age, with all this AI, the demand is even more. But I think what I believe that service providers really need to do is you'll have to look forward. You can't look backwards, right? You have to see what are the use cases that are coming up, what are the driving criteria that are coming up, and your network needs to scale accordingly. Easier said than done, right? Because where will you get the capex? Because you've just invested in an environment and suddenly you realize that you have to go in for a different setup. Again, the beauty today is look at the newer generation products. Look at the products from our side. We have just launched the world's first 1.6 terabits per second platform, WaveLogic 6E. Now, if I were to go to customers, say, you know what, you really need this because your use case demands absolutely fast lightning speed. On the face of it, it may not make sense. Now, let's put another color to this. Now, this what I'm offering uses only half the power and half the space. It gives 15% more spectral efficiency. Now, let me do the maths now and look at what it does to my revenue side. And if I say a TC over 3 years, I actually realize it is worthwhile for me to rip and replace and get this new infrastructure, which will ensure that I have the latest and the greatest, best speeds and feeds, helps me generate more revenue and newer revenue streams, and also is self-healing, secure and sustainable. Globally, for a telecom network, I think it couldn't have been a better moment because of what's really happening. There might be some blips down the road, like what we are having now. Somebody went over with investments, then they do some course corrections, etc. Globally, we are seeing some of that elements. But in the long run, if we see just a layman's view, is data exploding around us? Will it continue to explode? Will AI keep evolving? The answer is an absolute yes. Will data centers evolve? An absolute yes. Now, closer to home, I mean, I was just with discussing about the data center growth. The data center in this country is pretty much doubling every year and is likely to do so over the next 5 to 6 years. And a lot of the big hyperscaler, they're actually building AI data centers in India. Now, what does that mean? That means today the network will become the most important element, because if the data centers need to be connected, end of the day, the entire data will ride on these networks. And the good part today is, thanks to 5G, you can have different slicing. That means today it's not one size fits all. You can have a premium on what you offer, which was probably not available earlier. So, from a service provider perspective, there'll be new revenue streams which will come up. And I truly believe that in the times to follow, I think the network will just keep evolving and service providers will have multiple new revenue streams which will come up.